We have to act now. You certainly heard those urgent words in the past months and years. This is why we're talking about two very important topics today: climate protection and sustainability. How Google is acting here and how you can help make things better now. Not only the COP26 in Glasgow recently showed us we have to act now for our planet, our environment, and our descendants. If we don't change our behavior and actions in all kinds of fields, it will have devastating consequences for forthcoming generations. Today we want to put the spotlight on how we at Google are engaging when it comes to the topics of climate protection and sustainability. Why this is so important for Google since the company was founded, this is what Urs Hölzle can tell us. Born in Switzerland, he's a true original Googler. He was the 8th employee of the company. He started on April 1st, 1999, and he has been leading the infrastructure department since then. Hi Urs, thanks for taking your time. So tell us, what motivated you and Google to work on sustainability already in the early days?
In the early days, our key motivation wasn't just the environment, but also the economic benefits. We spent a lot of power in data centers, and a lot of that power was wasted, and wasted power means wasted money. And so in order to make our services more affordable, we were saving energy.
How did Google become carbon neutral already in 2007?
It was pretty apparent in 2007 already that climate change was going to be a big problem, and we thought we should do something about it. At the time, it wasn't quite realistic to have renewable energy as an alternative, so we started by looking for real carbon offsets. What real carbon offsets means things that we can verify have a climate impact that offsets the impact that our company was having. And so we looked for individual projects that we validated ourselves to make sure that they were real. And that's how we became carbon neutral in 2007.
What were the next steps after reaching this first important goal?
Once we were carbon neutral in 2010, we signed our first deal for renewable energy as a direct off-taker. And our goal even then was to get to 100%, but that seemed pretty far away. And really thanks to the progress in wind and solar unit costs and also in just how broadly available it became, we reached the 100% goal in 2017 already, well ahead of what we thought it would take.
The work of Urs and his team has ensured that Google is acting more climate-friendly and sustainable over the years. What our actual goals look like, this is what we're going to talk about with my colleague Ralf from our comms team. Ralf, Google consumes a lot of energy itself. How can we ensure that they're as climate neutral as possible?
It's a huge challenge. Our data centers, our offices like the Berlin office here, they use electricity around the clock, so it's important to consume as much renewable energy as possible. Already since 2017, Google matches its annual consumption of electricity with the exact amount of renewable energy that we either purchase or produce ourselves. So you can say on an annual basis, Google already is 100% renewable since 2017.
Google has set itself huge goals until 2030. How do they look like?
So the annual basis is one thing, but of course we need to avoid any emissions, and this is our goal until 2030. So we want to produce all of our services without creating any emissions. So that's a huge goal, 24/7 carbon-free, but we are committed to do that. The sun is not always shining, the wind is not always blowing. It's a true moonshot in the Google spirit, but we are really committed to achieve that because there's no alternative, and Google wants to play its role in that.
Focusing on Germany, how do the goals look like here?
In Germany, we have just announced 1 billion investment in digital infrastructure and renewable energy. So part of this program is also to achieve this goal, 24/7 emission-free, carbon-free until 2030. So we are really committed to achieve this in Germany, but also globally.
Of course, we cannot implement such projects on our own. This is why we're working together with the energy supplier ENGIE here in Germany. And with me is Ralf Bernhard from ENGIE. Ralf, tell us how is the collaboration between Google and ENGIE is working like?
Yeah, so first of all, we're the power supplier for Google in Germany. So we make sure that the data centers can operate 24/7 and are supplied with electricity. For us, that's of course the bread and butter business. That's what we do for many other clients in Germany, but also worldwide. What makes this deal special is that we look at every single hour of the year. We look at the power consumption of these different data centers. We look at the grid composition in the German mix, how much is coming from coal, how much from nuclear, and so forth. And we look at the generation of a fleet of renewable assets, solar and wind, and how much production there is in every hour that we contracted with Google.
And how do you do that exactly? So where is the power for Google coming from?
How we can guarantee this relates to three main aspects. So the first aspect is that as ENGIE we actually have access to a really wide pool of onshore wind assets that are falling out of the subsidy scheme. Having a large portfolio, and I mean we talked for the Google case about 40 different assets. And the advantage is that if, for example, there's no wind in the north of Germany, in Niedersachsen, it might be that at a certain hour there's wind in Hessen or in Thüringen, for example, and thereby we can still cover a share of the load or the entire load during that hour. So that's the first aspect. And the second aspect is typically wind assets produce more in the winter months. So you have a profile that's more shaped on the outside of the year, whereas in summer they don't produce as much. So we also contracted a solar asset that still needs to be built, which will complement that profile. So we'll have more generation in the summer months of the solar asset, plus the generation of the wind assets in the winter months. So we can already cover quite a large share of the consumption by doing that. And then the third aspect is our in-house expertise when it comes to risk modeling, but also power market modeling. So we looked at 30 different weather years, for example. What happens if there's less wind? What happens if the solar radiation is a bit different? For example, what happens if a wind farm falls out because of technical failure? I mean, these are wind assets that are 20 years old. And in the end, to find a confidence interval that works for both sides. Looking into the future, of course, it won't get boring. I mean, Google has the ambition until 2030 to actually cover 100%, so all their hours in the year with carbon-free energy. So in the end, we will have to look at what happens, for example, in hours of overproduction, when there's more solar and wind production than consumption of the data centers. How can we store that electricity and then use it in hours when there's, for example, no wind or no solar generation?
On the one hand, Google wants to do its own homework when it comes to climate protection. At the same time, we also want to help others with our data and tools to act more sustainably. One good example for this is the Environmental Insights Explorer, short EIE. How it works? This is what my colleagues Alexandra and Birgit are going to tell us. Hey you two. So first of all, you're working in the Geo Partnerships team on sustainability and climate change topics, and you're doing this in a so-called job share. So you're sharing your role at Google and you both work part-time. That's super interesting. So can you tell me who the Environmental Insights Explorer is actually for?
70% of global emissions are produced in cities. And this is actually where the EIE tool focuses on. It's really the beginning. And cities can see their environmental data, for example, CO2 emissions in the tool. And this for free, yearly updated data, and it's international comparable across cities.
So this tool is made for all cities in the world, and it's already available for over 20,000 cities. Essential is to partner with organizations in the climate area, as well as research and development.
And what is this tool capable of?
The cities, ideally those responsible in the communities, can look at the data, ideally compare it with their own data, potentially even model it in the tool. And we show different data in the tool, for example, data sets from traffic emissions, but also solar potential on rooftops, which in Germany right now is a very hot topic.
You also work together with the city of Hamburg. What exactly do you do there?
In Hamburg, we started in September this year with Project AirView. This is a joint project with the City Science Lab of the Hafen City University and an expert panel of the city. Here we are measuring air quality with an electric vehicle with which we are driving for 1 year through the city, through special streets, which we have defined in advance. And in the car, there is a sensor box, and this sensor box is measuring 6 different pollutions. This data will be provided to the city and, of course, as well in the EIE tool.
Working with cities is one thing, but we also want to enable our users to live more sustainably. My colleague Anna will now tell us which of our products are encouraging climate protection and sustainability.
Thanks, Alex. That's the exciting thing about climate protection. We can all have an impact. And that's exactly what we want to encourage with our products for our users to make more sustainable choices every day. So let's take Google Maps, for example. It's already used by millions of people around the world every day to show the latest information on public transport or the fastest bike lanes. Every day, Google Maps already provides information about more than 1 billion kilometers traveled on public transport. That's the equivalent of traveling to the moon and back for 1,200 times. And Google Shopping. You can choose the most climate-neutral shipping option. Or if you're planning your next vacation with Google, Google Flights can show you the greenest routes, and you can also see the most climate-neutral options for hotels in Google Search.
How important are climate protection and sustainability within Google?
There's a big group of Googlers who are passionate about sustainability. They're called the Greenglers.
I hope you have a better understanding now what Google is doing to help save the environment and how you also can have an active part in that. Thank you for watching and see you next time.